Hi, welcome to my channel. Now we uncover the untold story of the Titanic disaster. Introduction. The RMS Titanic was one of the most famous ships in history. People called it the Unsinkable ship. It was big, beautiful, and full of dreams. But in April 1912, the Titanic sank in the cold waters of the Atlantic Ocean, taking more than 1,500 lives. This story is about how the Titanic was built, what happened on that night, and why it became one of the greatest tragedies in modern history. Stay with us to the end of the video to learn the full story of the Titanic, the ship of dreams that turned into a nightmare. Building the Titanic. The Titanic was built in Belfast, Northern Ireland, by a company called Harland and Wolff. It took more than 2 years and thousands of workers to complete. The ship was owned by the White Star Line. The Titanic was huge. It was 269 meters long, about 3 football fields, and 28 meters wide. It had 9 decks and could carry more than 2,200 passengers and crew. Inside, it looked like a floating palace. There were grand staircases, dining halls, swimming pools, and even a gym. The first-class passengers enjoyed luxury like never before. The second and third-class passengers had simpler rooms, but still much better than most ships of that time. Everyone believed the Titanic was the safest ship ever built. It had 16 watertight compartments designed to keep it floating even if some parts were damaged. Newspapers called it unsinkable. The first voyage. The Titanic's first voyage began on April 10, 1912. It started from Southampton, England, and was going to New York City, USA. On board were some of the richest people in the world, businessmen, nobles, and celebrities, as well as hundreds of immigrants hoping for a better life in America. The ship stopped at Cherbourg in France and Queenstown, now Cobh, in Ireland to take more passengers. Then, on April 11th, it began its journey across the Atlantic Ocean. Life on the Titanic. For the first few days, everything went perfectly. Passengers enjoyed food, music, and luxury. The ship moved smoothly through calm waters. The crew worked day and night to make sure everything was perfect. Captain Edward Smith was one of the most experienced captains of the time. He had already planned to retire after this journey. Everyone trusted him completely. But even as passengers danced and dined, the Titanic received several warnings about icebergs floating in its path. The messages came from other ships, but they were not taken seriously. Some officers thought the Titanic was too strong to be in danger. The night of the disaster. It was the night of April 14, 1912. The ocean was calm and the sky was clear. Around 11:40 p.m., a lookout named Frederick Fleet saw a huge iceberg directly in front of the ship. He shouted, "Iceberg, right ahead!" The crew tried to turn the ship, but it was too late. The iceberg scraped along the right side of the Titanic, tearing holes in the hull below the waterline. Within minutes, water began flooding into the lower compartments. At first, most passengers didn't realize how serious it was. The music kept playing, and people thought it was just a minor issue. But the engineers knew the truth. The ship was going to sink. The panic begins. Captain Smith ordered the lifeboats to be prepared. The Titanic had only 20 lifeboats, enough for about half the people on board. It was a terrible mistake made during design. People had believed it could never sink, so they didn't think more lifeboats were needed. The crew began loading women and children first, following the old sea rule, women and children first. As the lifeboats were lowered, panic spread. Many people didn't want to leave the big, bright ship for small boats in the dark sea. But soon the truth became clear. The Titanic was slowly going down. The final moments. The front of the ship, called the bow, went under the water first. The back, or stern, lifted high into the air. People screamed and prayed. The band kept playing music to calm the passengers. At 2:20 a.m. on April 15th, the Titanic broke in two and disappeared under the icy water. Over 1,500 people died that night, most freezing in the cold ocean. Only around 700 people survived. The rescue ship Carpathia arrived about 2 hours later and saved the people who were still alive in lifeboats. The world's reaction. When news of the Titanic disaster reached the world, people were shocked. Newspapers everywhere talked about the tragedy. Families mourned loved ones. The unsinkable ship had sunk on its very first journey. The disaster led to big changes in ship safety. New laws were made. 1. All ships must carry enough lifeboats for everyone. 2. Ships must keep radio contact 24 hours a day. 3. Ice patrol teams were created to warn ships about dangerous icebergs. Discovering the Titanic wreck. For more than 70 years, the Titanic lay hidden at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. Finally, in 1985, an explorer named Robert Ballard discovered the wreck, about 3,800 meters, or 12,500 feet, below the surface. Photos and videos showed that the Titanic was split into two large pieces. Many of its rooms, furniture, and items were still there. Since then, several expeditions have explored the wreck, bringing artifacts to museums and keeping the story alive. Legacy of the Titanic. The Titanic is more than just a shipwreck. It's a lesson about human pride and nature's power. It showed that no matter how advanced we become, we must always respect nature and be prepared for danger. Movies, books, and documentaries have kept the memory alive. The 1997 movie Titanic, starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet, made the story famous again for a new generation. Even today, over 100 years later, the Titanic remains a symbol of beauty, tragedy, and the human spirit. Conclusion. The story of the Titanic is not only about death, it is about courage, love, and the cost of overconfidence. It reminds us that dreams can sink, but lessons can last forever. The Titanic sailed into history as the greatest ship ever built and sunk as the greatest warning ever told.